This panel's on the DRI landscape. I think last time it was kind of a corporate presentation about what the specific HPC resources were, mainly because EPSRC were paying it for the DRI Retreat through Tier 2 HPC money. This time we can be a little bit broader. I've enlisted a whole bunch of people that were told they were on the panel before the event, and a bunch of people that just I grabbed on the way in that thought might be an interesting perspective. So this is the DRI Retreat unscripted in part. So first of all, I think little brief introductions from everybody who's on the panel.
I am Stuart Clark. I'm from Durham University. I'm an academic physicist, but essentially I've been involved in theoretical computational work for decades, and that's essentially me using compute resources, everything from desktop up to national facilities. I've been involved in that since the early 90s when EPCC in Edinburgh was just kicking off, and I've used pretty much every machine they've had since then. So I've been at HPC for a little while now. Anything wrong with Archer 2, you can probably blame me as well. I was part of the procurement team. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to spend a long time introducing myself because I was on the panel before, so I'm Kate.
Likewise, I'm Louise.
So that happened. Is this on?
Yeah.
This happened very quickly. I'm Ed. That's not my real name. It's Andrew Edmondson. But since I was 9, I've been called Ed based on my surname. You can tell if you look at the badge how that works. I lead the research software group at the University of Birmingham in the Advanced Research Computing department, and I am currently chair of HPC SIG, which many of you will have been to and some of you will never have heard of. So talk to me. There are other SIG committee members in the room as well, Polly, excellent, and Stephen at the back who spoke earlier on. Just for a little bit of free advertising, the HPC SIG is an organisation that has approximately 40 universities as members and another 15 affiliated organisations, and we run events several times a year, which perhaps may come up more as the answers to some of the questions, so I won't say much more about that.
Thomas?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for inviting me. Right, I'm Thomas Lazauskas, and I'm a research computing lead at the Alan Turing Institute. So my day job is helping researchers to exploit and use all the HPC facilities that we have access in the UK through the partnerships and through the different programs that they are presented to researchers. As well, we are using quite a bit of a cloud computing, and what else? What I can say? Yeah, and I'm a research software engineer in heart, but now I'm just moving towards the bottom of what's been listed and just being, rather than doing a lot of hands-on work on programming and data wrangling, I'm more of like trying to think about what can we do better for the institute and as well for the research computing ecosystem in the UK. And also 2 years ago I did a study looking into what kind of infrastructure we need for the AI in the UK as well.
Do we have anyone online? Is Kirsty still?
Yes, I'm here. But yeah, hi again, and you already know who I am.
That's marvellous. So I think probably as a first little question, we'll talk a little bit about just in terms of the facilities that you maybe use or exposed to or run or provide to a community. Maybe what the motivation around those facilities were. How did they come about? Are they for a specific purpose, or are they very general purpose, or that kind of thing? Catherine, do you want to go first on this?
I love going first. It's a little theme for today. It's great fun. So Hartree Centre, for those of you who don't know, has been set up to lower the barriers of entry for industry, and that's public or private sector industry. So my facility is set up not to be state of the art, but to be a little bit back from that because it's state of the art for industry. So it has to be something that industry can use. So I always talk about things that are just about enterprise ready. That's what I'm interested in pushing in my centre. That doesn't mean to say academics can't use the centre, but that's how we're set up, and that means the access into it. I was talking to a colleague over coffee just now. The way we have set up our access, it has a more sort of security at the heart of it. We talk about sort of a trusted environments and trying to sort of build that round that my staff could tell you lots about, but that's what we have to do because of industry. So that's why we're a bit different.
Ed, do you want to go next?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll talk about the HPC SIG, I guess. That's probably the most relevant to this. So the HPC SIG came about, well, I don't know, but Alan could answer that better than I could. Quite a number of years ago, I guess HPC sysadmins wanted to help each other. Is that a fair way to say how it came about?
Those people, okay, so I can probably say that there was a thing called full economic costing that had kind of come up, and there was a big investment around SRIF 2 in computing, and there was this note that says you can have some money, but you've got to make it sustainable. And basically these people who were tasked, who were the sysadmins, really, of the day, were all given these £1 million budgets for the first time, and they had to make it sustainable. And so they all reached out to each other and went, help, to each other. And the HPC SIG formed really around that initial challenge.
And so that, essentially, that's still happening. HPC sysadmins reach out to each other and say, help. For example, without wishing to open a rabbit hole, on Friday, Owen from UCL pasted some information that had been going on in an email thread somewhere else, pointing out that Anaconda, if you use Conda for research, stick your hand up if you ever use Conda install blah or whatever. So they sent a load of cease and desist notices to UK universities on Friday saying, stop it, you should all be paying commercial licenses. So that's fun. So the HPC SIG is having a conversation internally. I say,
sorry, the face in the audience was just brilliant. There was a lot of training and white faces suddenly came over.
So we don't know what's going to happen with this, and the HPC SIG does not own this conversation, but people are using our communication channels and Slack and so on to talk about it. And at some point, conversations will get to a resolution. But it's a good example of why we all need to talk to each other. And one university by itself might go, oh no, right, we better pay for a site license for Anaconda. Does that include all your undergrads, all your postgrads? What does it mean? Is that 40,000 people? But together, hopefully, we'll come up with a decent idea of what is supposed to happen, and possibly even we might be able to lobby. So that's why we came about and what we exist for. One of the purposes. I don't want to keep talking too much.
Kirsty, do you want to take a little bit about data infrastructure and the sorts of environments which the library has to help people navigate?
Sure, I suppose we're much more there around about, and again, a lot of what the libraries offer across the UK is around about research data management support and how to put together your research data management plans. And I think being librarians, we're very interested in that data being organised and accessible and reusable in multiple forms. So that's one of the areas where libraries are particularly strong on, along with the repository element as well. And again, increasingly, we're focusing on the fact that all our content is digital, and we're looking at digital preservation and are quite often helping and supporting how can we make sure that that research data is managed and secure for the length of time that research funders require it, but also if it's reusable and has a lifespan beyond that, how can it be kept for the longer term? So sometimes looking at 50 to 100 years and what that might look like and what infrastructure we can help support. So that's one element of it. And the other element, which I've always been involved in, is how can we, for particular communities, make using research data and kind of using kind of high compute facilities easy and less scary, especially in the arts and humanities, and also come up with case studies and examples to showcase why even the arts and humanities might be particularly excited around about this side of things.
Thanks, Kirsty. Thomas, so where One Data starts, the sort of Data Science Institute, where the kind of computing and data comes together, do you want to take the sort of Turing approach of what's
Sure.
put in place?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the Alan Turing Institute, we took, at the very beginning, when the institute was established, we took the cloud-first approach, meaning that instead of investing in the HPC facilities, we focused on using the cloud for all our computing services. And then we treated as cloud as not as a solution for everything. So at the end, we realized that that's not the answer. We treated cloud as a way, like a Swiss Army knife. It can do everything with it, but it's not really the practical tool to do most of the things. So we really like cloud to prototype things. We really like cloud for quickly coming up with solutions. But at the end, when we have a computationally intensive workloads, when we have a lot of data that we need to store, to process, then we turn to Ed's team, to Alan's team, and this is where we really appreciate the HPC ecosystem in the UK. And I'm very grateful that it seems there are quite a lot of investments happening right now that's going to lift it up.
Louise, do you want to talk about things for like the large scale?
So for UK Square Kilometre Array Regional Centre, so the motivation, the overarching motivation, the end goal is to provide like astronomers with access to data storage and compute for the Square Kilometre Array. It's like data imaging the sort of universe, but it's like in the sort of nearer term, before the telescopes are built, we're part of the STFC IRIS community, and so we're sort of working with as part of that community, and the way their model of infrastructure works is that you have pooled resources, so you can also have access. Other people have access to our facilities through the IRIS scheme for science projects that already have been approved. So individuals don't apply. It's like on a project basis, and we're a development project, and so the telescopes are going to be creating 700 petabytes of data a year globally, and the UK is our contributions for construction and is sort of dealing with 15 to 20% of this, and so we're developing and innovating on digital infrastructure on how to deal with this. And so this includes benchmarking, profiling activities, working very closely with Excalibur and the hardware enabling software projects on how we can do that, and also on how we can improve networking and what the importance is of tuning the networking locally as well as nationally and internationally, and testing, working out how to do this, as also the different types of configuring your storage for large, sort of like very large data sets. For the sort of archive storage sides of things. So, so the motivation is one for the astronomers, but also very much sort of helping to develop the understanding what we need for exascale computational sort of research when you've got large data sets.
And Stuart, you obviously use a whole raft of different HPCs all around the place. Why do you choose a particular one or the other, or?
Well, the thing is, if you think of the way sort of computational science works, you often find there's no single machine that's actually specific for a given area of research. You need an entire set from the sort of small desktop. You work way up through sort of possibly departmental or university cluster, etc. So if we start from sort of the top level, you've got the nationally funded tier 1 type machines, and that's now sort of slow, towards exascale and things is the current direction. But of course, below that then is what we have the tier 2, and that's actually sort of the core of what N8CIR sort of is doing. We're a set of 8 universities who have come together in this group with all of the sort of diverse sets of skills that people have here, and sitting within that is a team where it allowed us to actually successfully bid for the N8 machine, which is sitting in Durham. And of course, below that, you then have things like, as I said, university facilities. And I think that's what sort of the area which is if you like, has the least amount of uniformity with respect to kit and funding, etc. It's all done sort of university by university. Although one of the COVID benefits is the experimentalists realise they also require computing. Yeah? And so that I don't know how it is in all universities, but that certainly helps with the usage within where I'm in Durham, and so our HPC service there is the single largest university facility. It's like, so you tend to find a number of facilities in universities. You have things like an NMR suite or electron microscopy suite, and there's a whole range of other things you may find in sciences and beyond. We find that sort of our HPC service is the biggest single sort of facility there, so it certainly helps with the internal bidding for money there. But of course, what we require then is the entire set of people behind that to run, and of course that's an argument which I think we're all having in our institutions, where we have things like slowly getting better, but still things like poor career paths, etc., for the type of people where we need such skills. And I think it's mentioned earlier on. We train them, you stay for a short while, someone pays you more, you leave, etc. And we're also fighting that. So there's still that to be dealt with respect to trying to keep skills within our communities. It's one of the things that is still, I think, a long way to go. Another one within HPC with respect to skills is that let me just by example, I code on things in physics, electronic structure problems, and so you can hire some postdoc to help you out, do some things. So last postdoc I wanted someone with HPC skills. I got 80 applicants, and not one of them had HPC skills. Yeah, they all, however, had the ability to run programs on HPC. They could submit to a batch queue, but they're not actually. But they haven't got the underlying. If like programming, there's no MPI experience, there's no OpenMP experience. There's there's almost nothing with respect to GPU programming experience and so forth. And so we are within the HPC community, we are leaking skills out into other places that essentially pay more. And so it's a little issue I have with that, with respect to sort of fighting management that we do require, all the way up to sort of professorial level RSEs. I mean, we need good career paths to keep people in, and with my particular sort of areas within HPC, but that's obviously broader across all of our computational work.
Okay, so one word which there's been pretty much everybody mentioned it, and I'm gonna come to Kirsty first. Around so everyone mentioned the word community in this, and I think this is a really important thing. And actually, is it a community of communities, little community? How do these? We talk about this, the community, but what defines it as such? How did we actually get to a point where people actually got together and around a particular problem to solve that kind of thing? I think a lot of this sort of facilitation role around making this infrastructure successful is about the people, and not the kind of being protective about your knowledge, your little thing that you know about, but actually people displaying it and sharing. So I just wanted, within the sort of the data community, within the HPC community, within the way we operate, good examples of communities within those communities, that have come about and the effect that they've had. Kirsty first.
So I suppose we deal, I think like everyone, we're dealing with sort of different communities. And again, we sort of have different approaches depending on which community we're dealing with. A lot of the work we're doing in the library is quite often either with early career researchers, where we're trying to encourage them to kind of think around about particular aspects when you're sort of working with data, and then also kind of using different facilities and beginning to think around about, you know, what do you do about your software as well as your research data? How's that going to work? And again, one of our other roles quite often is to bring beginners or people who are novices, let's put it that way, into and encourage them to start thinking and moving in the direction of using a lot of the facilities that we've been talking about. So we're very much dealing with a very we're dealing with a very broad community. We're dealing with a community that tends to have less expert knowledge, and we're trying to give them those introductions into different things. And also, I suppose, again, what libraries do a lot is we're pointing them to where information and more in-depth knowledge can be found. And what we're trying to link them up with is the other communities within the university that might take them on to the next step. So that's part of what we're very much trying to do and trying to facilitate. So it might be going, you know, yes, you've attended some of our training sessions and you found out a little bit more, but why don't you go and talk to Karen Barnes, who has the research engineering team, and she'll be able to take you on to the next step because you need to do something in a bit more detail now. So it's that linkage and connection and opening up and trying to help others uncover where the community is that we're aware of within the institution.
Catherine, do you want to talk about this with respect to kind of economic development, sort of, and within the Hartree remit, sorts of how that, you know, sort of how the industry becomes part of that community?
Yeah, I mean, we have to work in quite a close relationship with industry, and the way that we do that is we have to have some domain specialists, and we sectorise it into several different clusters around the centre to try and engage with industry in the different sectors. The difficulties we find is that we might go into automotive and we'll have a complete end members from both end members, from organisations that have absolutely no understanding of what AI can do, right through to a whole load of, say, Volkswagen or some of these bigger companies where they've even got quantum teams. So it is quite hard to gauge where the intervention has to be, but you have to keep talking to them all the time, and that's part of the remit of what we've got to do in Hartree.
Okay. Ed, do you want to talk a little bit, you talked a bit about HPCC, but maybe there's obviously the sort of local university communities, the sort of stuff that you do around the kind of Baskerville service, the research software engineering community, a little bit about just how those maybe compare and contrast the kind of role of those areas.
Yeah, okay. Well, small to big. So at the university we have tried, I think, maybe 4 times to get a coding club for various different names off the ground. The idea is there are loads of researchers who code on campus. They would surely all want to come together and learn from each other. It doesn't work, or it hasn't worked for us. What we find is you get 70 people to the first meeting, then sort of 30 to the second meeting, and then from then on it's your team plus 2 really keen researchers, and it's not kind of sensible to keep running the events. So what we've done in the Baskerville, this isn't Baskerville, it's in the West Midlands, or the broader Midlands, includes Nottingham folk as well, we have started a thing called the RSE Midlands Coding Club. So we have a regional RSE community called RSE Midlands. You could work that out yourself. And we have an RSE Midlands Coding Club, but the assumption is if you have 2 or 3 really keen researchers from 8 universities or 10 universities, then you can have a community. It's big enough. And 2 or 3 people from each team. Now, it's actually proving slightly hard to keep this thing going, but we've had a lot of good events. And if you do exciting type events, then you get more people coming. So we had one event where the name has fallen out of my head. Anyway, the Centre at Illinois, the National Supercomputing, NCSA at Illinois, they came and did a virtual takeover of our RSE Midlands Coding Club and talked all about loads of their projects. That was really interesting. People came along and listened to that. One person doing a kind of "this is how I write my unit tests" talk doesn't attract as many people. And if you want researchers who are very busy to come along to your events, it has to feel worth their while. And so doing it at a university level is just hard. We have a research computing community, which is essentially a Slack workspace at the University of Birmingham, and mostly it's used to say, I can't reach the supercomputer. Is anyone else having trouble? And then someone else replies saying, yes, I can't reach it either. There are a few good things, and we use it to advertise, and perhaps using it to advertise is the best thing we have for that. So our engagement team, Steph leads our engagement team in the middle of the room. Hello, Steph. They post a lot of good things in there saying, this event is happening, that event is happening, please fill in our survey, all that sort of thing. At the other end of the scale, so I was chair of the 2019 RSE conference, programme chair, and that community is buzzing and has been for a long time. And the RSEs, the phrase that people in the HPC world say is, the RSEs have got this really good community and we look with jealous eyes at the RSE community. And they really do, and the conference is good, and the RSE Society works well. I think there might be some, at least ex-trustees, if not current trustees in the room. Hello, Martin. And it really is working well. HPC SIG, in the middle there, works quite well as a community. What we have done this year, as a way of trying to tap into the big buzzing community, is HPC SIG is sponsoring RSECon this year. So to try and get a bit of crossover, you talk to the 400 RSEs who might go to the conference, or the several thousand who are on the RSE Slack. They might not know what HPC is, quite a lot of them. They might not know what an HPC sysadmin does. They might not realise that they might enjoy being an HPC sysadmin. So we're going to go and have a presence and let them know that we exist. I've probably reached some kind of time. You should have a bell that goes off when I should stop talking. There's many more things I could say, but I don't want to monopolise it.
Okay. So I'm gonna say, well, no, I attended a conference online in the States last week, right? And it says, and this is to Thomas, they were very enthusiastic about the HPC community and the research computing community, and then they came out with a statement that said, but there is no AI community. Right? In the UK.
Right.
Are we any different?
Yeah, that's a very fair statement, and I think that AI communities, I think it's a fairly young community, and the things happen really fast. So I think that even the software, the hardware, the problems keep changing. So I think it's very difficult to establish a base for what the community would look like, how it should look like, and what kind of people should join it. So I think when we say AI, it just could be everything. In the end, I think that after 5 or 10 years, what's not going to be, with AI, very difficult to say. So what are we trying to do? I think that there are communities around the frameworks that AI community is using, and then you can get the help from them. I think there is a little bit of a interest happening around the particular aspects of AI, like, for example, large language models. At least at the institute level, we have interest groups, and the interest groups actually for becoming more and more popular. So we started with I believe 10 people who were just reading the Transformers paper, and now it grew to, I think, around 100 people who were just meeting every week, and somebody is just talking about the latest news that they read. So I think that there is opportunity to scale there, and there is a lot of interest, but it's very difficult to define what is AI and how the community should look like. I think that there needs to be a certain goal that everybody needs to agree that they're gonna work on and they will try to achieve. So then I think the community would be successful.
So I'm going to segue a little bit into this AI question, right? Because it's sort of crept up on us. It's suddenly become a massive thing over the last 3 years. I mean, it kind of wasn't before. So Stan, how is AI actually changing our day jobs, right? In terms of, the sort of communities that we have to support, what we have to think about, what is actually now going on that is being thrown at us that we have to cope with that we didn't do before? Stuart, do you want to go first around that?
From working in academic departments, there's a number of things there that I can comment on. Firstly, when it comes to sort of writing grants, that's the bandwagon I find myself having to be on, whether I want to or not. Yeah, no, I do actually. Yeah, but it's with research councils, UK or whatever, going with a certain direction. So the two big ones at the moment seem to be AI and quantum, right? So I'm currently trying to jump on both AI and quantum, such that whatever grant I write, essentially has that flavour to it. And so what's happening is you're often being pushed in a direction which is not necessarily natural for you to go in, but you end up having to do that because you, from an academic point of view, I have to follow the money. And AI is one of these things where the money is certainly going. And now, there are certain areas in AI which are actually very useful for the type of work I do. I won't bore you with that. I can give you a entire lecture on it if you like. But there are certain areas in which we need to sort of take our research in that direction. And of course, what happens is I'm an expert in physics, but I'm an amateur in AI. But I'm supposed to be leading grants on AI. And so what I actually need from this type of community is what is sensible for me to do with my research with the AI tools that are currently available. I have to do that because I say I have to follow the money. And so some kind of AI community, which as you say is young and not quite there in a cohesive manner yet, would actually be incredibly useful, to have some collaborative members there who would, if you like, do that part for me. We would be part of the team, and I'm bringing in their expertise. Yeah. However, just a little sideline in AI. Another one from academic point of view is trying to get the kiddies not to write their essays using it. But that's a whole other argument as well.
Louise, do you want to talk about maybe how let's try to grasp this metal?
So when I've been speaking to various researchers and trying to understand what their computational challenges are now and what they might be in the future, they're very CPU focused at the moment, and so the answer is we don't do AI, and we don't use GPUs. So our challenges at the moment is to understand if this is true or if this is their perception. Because is this something that's been tested and have their codes been looked at? This is why we're doing the benchmarking and profiling, to understand whether this is just, we like our codes and we don't wish to change our codes because we've nurtured these codes for a long time and they love their codes. And so, but because we're getting so much more data, and we also need to work out how we're going to do responsible computing with taking care of how much energy we'll use, so moving to GPUs would be a good thing. It's trying to work out, at the moment the discussion, we're trying to just work out how and where we can use AI appropriately in the different science cases that we're working with. That's the challenge.
Catherine, you're eager to say something about AI.
I would say from my perspective with industry, it's the convergence of AI, HPC and quantum. That's where we're seeing the biggest changes. We are interested in the tech, so when someone comes to us, we generally just go, we're not interested in what you're saying the technology is that you want to use, we're interested in what the problem is and then giving you the appropriate technology to answer that problem. If you are going to use quantum and get quantum advantage early, you are going to have to use it with classical compute alongside it, at least for the time being. I know some providers are suggesting that we could have quantum compute ready to be in industry ready type practices in the next 4 to 5 years, but I think it might be more than that So I think it's that convergence of technology. And then we go round for industry, when we're talking about AI, it's about the governance of it, the understanding of your data, the understanding of bias. So I always talk about the biggest thing going forward is getting a community outside of where we are today that are data literate, because you cannot use AI if you are not data literate, because you are not understanding what that machine is giving you. I love a story that I used to give students, which was that so somebody got AI to look at why penguins were getting reduced numbers of penguins, and they said, well, there's more beef burgers being eaten. So therefore, the reason that penguins are being reducing in numbers is because people are eating them in beef burgers, because that data works beautifully, it works matches. If you don't have the domain expertise to look at that and go, that is a complete load of rubbish, and we can all come up with loads of stories. So I think when we're talking about AI is here. Students are using it to write their essays. We know that, but then we can write things in a way that means that they've got to explain what they've written, and we can, AI is not actually there well enough to start writing whole books. Yes, it's a very good summary tool. Yes, I do use it as well, like everybody else, to speed things up when I'm having to do presentations and summaries. But at the end of the day, it's a tool, and it's a tool that has to be used responsibly. So I would suggest that we need to be looking at the governance of how we use things, being open about the fact that we've used different tools to do that, and looking at the convergence of technology, because, guys, that is where we're going to see the greatest discoveries going forward.
I'm seeing lots of nods from Kirsty. How's things look from you from in the libraries and where AI is coming in?
I think very much chimes with what you were just sort of saying there. It is very much looking at that ethical usage of AI, and really looking at how we introduce people to that. And again, if people don't understand data, that then is the sort of challenge. But it's that ethical use of AI, not just in the sort of data sets and language models, and kind of encouraging people to, when they're creating new data sets, thinking around about the ethics, but also the sort of environmental costs behind all of that and what's happening there, and then how we sort of make sure that we've got the appropriate governance, and what that looks like in the different elements that we're all dealing with, and how that sort of joins up and joins together. So I think those are all really key areas that we're grappling with. I don't think anyone has all the answers, but I think at least what's really encouraging is to hear that we're all thinking about similar questions.
Thank you. So I'm going to throw this one to Ed a little bit around just the kind of hypothetical situation that we have an academic, say like Stuart in the room, who's obviously wanted to get as many buzzwords as possible into his. He wants to get quantum, HPC and AI into his grant proposal, and he comes to you going, help, can you help me write this thing? And you're going, I need this thing to hold a little bit of water. So what's kind of the research computing services trying to, going to do here?
Now I'm listening.
I guess step one is what do you mean by AI? Is probably the first question. So, do you mean large language models and generative AI and the kind of the exciting newspaper stories and ChatGPT and all that kind of thing? Do you mean image segmentation? Automatic images to text type reading. Do you mean machine learning to help to train and guide your molecular dynamics code? There's all manner of different things historically that are AI. They used to say, didn't they, that you put AI in your grant proposals and machine learning in your job descriptions. But now it might be different because people's understanding of the terms has moved on. So what do you mean by AI? And is it to do the science, or is it to help speed up or optimize the science, or is it to help with impact or outcomes after you've done it? So conversations like that I would start off with, and then I would do things like, okay, so say it is large language models that you want. I would try and find someone in computer science, and I would at Birmingham I'd know who that would be, and at Durham it would be somebody else. Someone at computer science who could say, I could be a co-I on that, and yes, I actually know what large language models are, and I could write you one. I don't have time to write you one, but I could be co-I on your grant and give you some gravitas, I suppose, so that when all 50 grant applications have come into a call saying they're going to use AI, yours has someone who's got a publication history in AI attached to it. I would start there, I think.
Okay, Thomas, maybe this
Or I'd talk to Thomas.
involving this. You talk to Thomas. Yeah, and I think there's a skills development side of things, and Stuart mentioned that it's hard to find people with coding skills and HPC skills, right? And actually, those the HPC sort of has been a thing for decades, right? AI, a few years, in this kind of form that it's in now. How do you actually go about, getting the people with the skills? What do or creating the people with the skills? What is it that you look for? What is when these things weren't things like literally not very long ago?
Right. I would like just to start with a comment about what being said previously. So yes, Stuart, please come talk with us. We have the National Institute for Data Science and AI, and then we would be very happy to collaborate. And then we have a lot of expertise in this area. So yes, please come and talk with us. But how do we go about finding the right people? So there are two approaches. By either we hire people with the who has already experience with the tools and the techniques, or either we train themselves. And then the training process is quite slow, and it's an investment, and you need to find the dedicated people who are willing to spend a year or two just thinking about a particular problem or set of problems, and to develop their expertise in this. And I think that so far we've been, in our group that Martin is leading, we have been quite successful, and we see that we actually developing these pillars of knowledge where people actually finding particular challenges that they're interested in. Either it is large language models, others they like research computing, which is related to AI, or a little bit more of a vision problems. So we do have a lot of people interested in different areas. So, and they come to the Turing, like I said, it's like from different ways. It's quite a few of them who are focusing on research computing, they are coming from the physics field, but this is just like a trend. I don't understand fully why it is, but that it is what it is. And to be honest with them, they have a good knowledge of mathematics, and I think that they can get the concepts of AI and how it works pretty fast. So I think that there is not people is not. I think it's not a problem. I think it's just motivating them, and then providing opportunities for them to learn, have the time to learn these things and new tools. I think is key.
Catherine, so Thomas talked a lot about the kind of hard kind of skills there, development, specific areas. In terms of, the sort of engagement with the industry and that sort of the sort of maybe. Could you maybe comment around the soft skills that you look for in the workforce that kind of you pack into Hartree when you're talking about kind of advanced topics?
Mm-hmm. So we do run training courses for mid-career in industry. So what we're trying to get industry to understand is that when people do training, it's not at the beginning of their career and then they're trained and then that's lovely and we go away and we never have to look at a book, or obviously you wouldn't look at books now because we're all into AI, so we'd get it summarised for us. But I'm being a bit flippant. But the ethos here is that you have to have continuous training, and that's what we're trying to encourage in Hartree with our industry partners. So we provide levels of training courses to upskill the UK workforce, because we are very well aware that the amount of jobs that are coming out that require data science, require AI skills, require you to have RSE skills, is increasing, and we cannot train the workforce through just doing PhDs. We have to do it in lots of different ways. So through the apprenticeship scheme, graduate training scheme. It was lovely to talk to Sarah today, who's gone through the STFC graduate programme. But there's lots of other programmes very similar out there. I'm trying to encourage this training for life, continuous training, because the skills today that we need in the workforce, if you are in your 40s, there were not the degrees there in AI and quantum at the time you were at school, university there. And I'm afraid for those of you just starting on your journey, I hate to tell you this, but in 10 years' time, you're going to be looking back going, oh, I wish I could have done a degree in this new thing, neuromorphics or whatever, biocomputing, whatever the next big thing that comes along is going to be. So we've got to do continued training, and we've got to encourage everybody to do it. I'm babbling now.
So, Louise, I saw you scribbling down. So
No, I was talking about how to train. So I think
free at the point of access, it's all open online.
So I think it's training, and there's also, I think, peer-to-peer training is also something important, going back a bit to the community discussion earlier. I think that there's lots of opportunities to enable that and foster that sort of approach. I found when in my previous role at UCL, it worked well when it had buy-in from the senior leadership in the department. And so then they sort of said, we value this activity and we want this to happen for our department, and then we bring in the RSCs from from now what would be ARC to help support that. But the person leading the first code club in the Institute of Child Health had no coding experience whatsoever and was quite worried about it. And I was like, that's fine, neither do I, but here's some people who can help and help build this. And it was, and they found it very useful because they did peer-to-peer coding, and also just sharing everyone on that journey. So it's kind of making it easier for people to step into the unknown and try new things when you've not, when you've got a group of people saying, yeah, I've also got that problem, and yeah, I'm also don't know how to do this. So I think that helps helps with basically developing it across the and distributing the knowledge as you go through.
And Kirsty, how has the sort of internal staffing of the library, changed over the past kind of, I guess, decade or 2 decades or so, and what do you see now happening, as we go into kind of the AI era?
I suppose our skill sets are having to change, and again, that's quite a challenge. I think, like all the other speakers, staff are at different points in their journey. Some find it really quite scary, and others sort of embrace it and really want to learn more. So again, we're having to look at what our staff need to know and how they can work, and it's everything from understanding what you can do with published data and the publishers we deal with, and how we can ensure that if researchers want to kind of create large data sets from that published data, how we can make sure that text and data mining is possible, and how we can enable that through the kind of contacts we have and look at that side of things. So looking at that sort of publishing, licensing, in order to then lead into kind of different types of research, how we get access to it. Is it free of charge? Is it an additional service that's paid for? All of that, and how you negotiate around about that side of things, means that our content and procurement is changing. But then also looking at how we kind of work and interact with this data means that increasingly we too run kind of really regular coding training sessions and a variety of different coding in order to, again, ensure that staff at different levels have those skills. And again, we try and find, I think, like a number of people have said, keeping those kind of communities of practice going once you've done some initial training. So we too have been experimenting with sort of coding clubs whereby actually people come together to work on a shared problem or a shared activity, and everyone kind of works together. It's a bit like working in the library when you're studying as a student. You come to the library because it's shared misery, perhaps, as you're getting ready for your exams. So coming together to work on a coding problem is about that sort of shared challenge. Perhaps it's a little bit misery, perhaps it's a little bit fun, and having peers to support you with some of the sort of challenges. And that's gradually embedding. And again, we're working a little bit across the White Rose library community, but we've also been talking as part of the N8, because again, it's about that scale. Our community is not that large, but we're hoping that will enable our staff to have the skills to help academics and researchers when we encounter them, so that we can confidently talk about, what is the potential of AI and have a better understanding. And sometimes someone will come and go, I've heard AI can do this and I want to do this. And it's about us knowing or having a little bit of a sense of, is that the art of the possible or not? So that's what we're looking at the moment.
So, is this a serious question or not for Stuart, around the observation that someone mentioned that a lot of these people in research computing kind of fell out of physics PhDs, okay? And is that, what is it that is about that kind of that experience that makes it particularly appropriate for that kind of work? And is how transferable is that, to these new areas?
That's actually a really good question. One of the things I actually wanted to, if we were going to get a chance to ask you folks things, one of the things I actually wanted to ask is, how many of you folks are from the sort of physical sciences? Yeah, exactly. So there is something about it, isn't there? And I guess it's mathematically and numerically literate, yeah, and hence coding or going to algorithms, etc., is something that you're used to doing. It's part of your background training in some sense. And so rather than going into sort of the research in a sort of particular field of science, you found that you actually enjoyed the computational side of things, and then the sort of coding of things follows from that. I was fortunate in my career that I ended up getting a job that allowed me to just do that, yeah, and in the academic side, So it's like I do research, but the fun bit I actually have is the coding. It's a thing. It's a thing I've always enjoyed, and so there's something in the physical sciences. I'm sure it's broader than that as well, but you did ask physics, yeah. That people end up going down sort of the computational science software route, which is useful. But the other thing on that is when you move into that career, again, just maybe I'm now asking the audience rather than them asking us, but from a sort of academic point of view, I think I understand how the bosses measure my sort of inputs and outputs. It's if I get some grants, then someone in accountancy is happy, and if I publish some papers, then the next time we're doing a ref, someone's happy. From the sort of research infrastructure point of view, is there something that that you can do which will progress your career? What is your output measured on? What is it? I mean, is there something that needs to be done that will aid that in some sense? What is the career path? I'm not all about metrics, but someone above you is. Yeah, and what are they? Is there something that we need to be measuring? I mean, it's many of you will be writing software, but it's not about lines of code. There's something that's happening. You're aiding someone else's research. Are you being properly included, and so forth? Anyway, I'm sort of slightly diverted from your point, but anyway, maybe that's for another session.
There's probably a session on career paths.
There's maybe a session. I've kind of wandered down a different route. Let me stop talking there. Yeah.
Okay, I think probably at this juncture it'd be good if there are any questions from the people in the audience or comments or whatever. It'd be really good to hear them say.
Hello, standing up's a bit awkward when you've got stuff on the desk in front. But my question is, it's kind of based on like some personal experience I've had with, generally with like researchers, academics, and mentionings of AI and grant applications. So we've talked about how we could, you know, get people who work within, you know, AI and research software engineering, well, academia, and how we could train them and give them skills to like better themselves. But we don't really talk about how academics who are not technical write grants like yourself, Stuart, and just like sprinkle in AI, we need machine learning with this. How could we educate them, spread awareness to them that like about the ethics of AI and how you do not need AI for the most basic thing ever? Because as a research software engineer, I deal with like all kinds of academics, some technical, some not, and having to explain, oh, you don't need AI for this, you don't need machine learning for this, like this is, I don't want to, you know, call out anyone's projects, but like this is like, for example, just a simple calculator, like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
How could we spread awareness of that? Like, how would you go about that is my question, because I think that's an important area.
I was just going to throw out how many people can kind of empathise with that particular. There's a lot of kind of like, you know, we've said it's going to be AI, actually it's just like a calculator on your phone, guys. Seems to be
It's
a lot
also
of
not just academics either, I would be honest. A lot of industry partners come in. Usually they've heard about quantum, so they want everything in quantum. And you're right, it's a spreadsheet quite often that gives them the answer. I think from my perspective with an industry group, we are looking at the moment at developing training courses. We talk about this tail, this long tail, where you haven't got many people that are at the top end of knowledge. We've got a lot of people down at the bottom on this tail end, and designing courses for that group that really helps them come some ways, so that before they get to you, they're actually starting to ask you some more intelligent questions about what they're doing. We're talking about board level training, because we think it starts from the top and goes all the way down. And in the next phase of Hartree funding that we're looking at putting together, we're going to put in a lot more on that area of training, because I think rather than us going higher up to practitioner level, it's actually at the basic level that I need to give people more support on. So I do feel your pain. I do understand where you're coming from.
Anybody got any more? Ed?
Well, you could give a similar response possibly in terms of, if you want people to get training on AI, the ideal people would be those who are judging the grant applications that these people are putting AI unnecessarily into. This is accepting your premise. So what you would like would be to have a load of people who are experts in their own topic and know what AI could do and couldn't do, and could then judge the grant applications and say, yes, this one could use AI, that'd be great, that one doesn't need it, so no. And then the process should work itself out. The people putting it in all their grant applications and never getting funded might stop putting it in. And so training those high up people, I mean high up in one sense. You can't train everybody to be experts. So maybe what you then need to do is to make people, when they've just got rid of this, but in tier 2 HPCs, until this latest round, you had to submit a technical assessment before your actual request for time on the HPC. And the technical assessment was basically a way of proving that you knew what you were doing and could use the supercomputer. And then you requested time. So maybe we need something where you have to say, I know what I'm doing and the words I've put in this grant make sense. I have no idea how you would actually implement that, other than the way I think it normally works, which is somebody who already is respected can win the money. So maybe you get the Turing to send you a letter of support saying, yes, what they're doing makes a lot of sense. That, you would have thought, would have a higher chance of winning the funding than the place that didn't. He's got a hand up.
Chris, there's your microphone down.
Thanks. Yeah, I just really wanted to stick in a comment, if I may. This is very much with. Sorry. This is very, very much with my Professor of Statistics hat on today. Yeah. I am astonished about this sudden buzz of, oh, can we use AI for this? Oh, is it biased? Oh, can we interpret the results correctly? Because we've been doing this in statistics since the 1930s, if not before. It's such a common thing in my subjects. And to respond to you directly, Ed, we always advise medics doing clinical trials or epidemiologists or whoever to have a statistician on your grant proposal. Yeah. Even only if 5%. And surely we just broaden this out to AI experts. And surely statistics is just one component of AI.
I totally agree. I can remember when I was working at the British Geological Survey, I was charged with digitally transforming the survey, and one of the things we decided to do was data science and digital, and I brought in a statistician, and it revolutionised the understanding of the data that we had. What you guys can give to a grant proposal, because you know what you're talking about, is immense. Well, as I say, just have to know 10% more than the rest of us, and which can be dangerous, actually. I always think that if an expert is 10% more knowledge than everyone else, that's fine if that's a high level. But there you go.
Rando.
Hi, I just wanted to mention you deal with management and people in companies and so forth. In a previous life, once I gave a presentation, and in that presentation for productivity, I just used the statistics you might have in GCSE, just the very, very minimum, and I was told by the head of the panel that those were far too complicated, too technical, and that was not appropriate to show to management. So if you have people like that in management, how can you marry it with what Chris is saying?
Well, we go back to this thing about you guys being in leadership and having the aspirations to move into leadership, because if we don't get a diverse board with a diverse set of expertise, we are never going to champion. You're absolutely right. Get over that. If we're making database decisions and we don't want to see any data, it's not good, is it?
Question for online participants. How do we brand cross-discipline events to attract all relevant communities and not just for academics or just a tech event?
Good question. Louise or Ed? You're pointing at Ed. I don't know, you wanted to take the question, you had your hand up while you were pointing at Ed.
Yeah, so in my previous role for the e-research domain, this was sort of one of the key things I had to do, is trying to, so it would be getting have very clear branding saying what you're going to learn from the event and who it is for. And so it's making it clear of why people should attend and how it will benefit them in the near term. People, like researchers at large, are not interested in here's a service the university can provide for you, that unless they actually want that service just then. That's not like the event that they'll attend, but they tend to, they're interested in finding things that they can use. So things like short presentations on data resources that are available within the university or in that department. And so then people can be like, well, this could further my career. But then also marrying that with sort of like the data steward support service, and sort of like that, and different aspects of services that can enable them to do it in an appropriate way. And so it's kind of marrying these two things up and making it, having logos of things. So you've got your different logos. If you can have developed events which are get the buy-in of a department, so for biosciences with engineering, and you have the logos on all the images and in the text, so then people can realise, oh, they identify with that's my sort of thing, I will go there. And so it's kind of partnering with people within the universities or outside so they can easily identify that that is appropriate.
Kirsty, do you want to maybe say something about, kind of sort of the I guess the location that is a library and the sort of the position within an organisation in terms of its perceived agnosticism and things like this that might help actually break down a lot of barriers to engagement with different communities?
Yes, I mean, I suppose we're quite a neutral space, and that we aren't, we're discipline agnostic, and we're sort of helping and supporting all the different disciplines. So I think, again, that can provide quite a useful melting pot sometimes for us to provide, especially for researchers and early career researchers who are sort of exploring or looking at what tools and techniques and approaches they want to become more familiar with and learn more about. Then the library can feel like quite a safe space to kind of come along and learn some new skills. And again, that is one of the kind of key things we do offer. So I think that really helps. And then also the connections into the wider university and making sure that we're aware of what the kind of research teams are doing in different areas and spaces as best we can. We try and do our best. We probably don't always get it right, but it's that, again, providing a bridge and a link into the different elements of the university in quite a neutral space that can be helpful. And again, I think, as a number of the speakers have said, what we're really keen to do is to enable researchers to understand what the different tools and techniques can do, so that they can then understand actually they don't need to use AI for something else will do, or another approach will work, or this is where they need to kind of go and look. But I think, again, it's around about a non-discipline specific element that can make the library quite a good space to explore that, but also to build connections with people from different disciplines that allow them to learn from each other as well.
Oh, Fernando.
Hi, just a question. Where did you get the staff to teach those skills? The reason being I'm asking is because, for example, on grade 7, pays about £25 per hour on the top of grade 7, but someone who's tutoring school kids, GCSE A levels, is earning about £35 per hour. Thanks.
So most of our training staff are in that sort of grade 6, 7 space, depending on what they're offering and what kind of skills they have. And again, we kind of offer a mix. We don't often interact with school children, although we do occasionally get school visits into the library, and we tend not to sort of look at these sides of things. But what we're looking at is very much kind of, again, Louise was talking around about targeting your training and kind of targeting what the offer is to make sure that it's clear, it's understood what you're going to get out of it. Everyone's really time poor these days. So again, we make sure that, we deliver things in a mix, online, in person, but also longer sessions, which are 2 hours, versus kind of short bite-sized introductory sessions, which can be half an hour to an hour, to give people a taster to decide whether they want to explore further. So it's that mixed offer. But again, we're really aware that we're not the experts, and that what we're offering is quite often at that introductory to intermediate, and what we're trying to tackle is people who are real beginners to have a better understanding, and kind of to point them then, if they become so expert, to point them then where there's the sort of training and the support to take them on to the next stage. I'm really sorry, I'm also going to have to leave you, so thanks very much for having me this afternoon.
That's great.
I'm going to sign off on that particular answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've almost reached the end of the session. I think it's till 4 o'clock. No, we'll run. I'm reading the next things. I've actually run by 15 minutes, which is terrible. How terrible. But just a little bit of a straw poll survey, really, in terms of links to other kind of professional kind of organisations within your professional things with your organisation. We've obviously had someone from the libraries here. How many of you as research computing people have an active relationship with people in your libraries? Would be a kind of like, okay, that's cool. And then we'll go for another one. So how many that are kind of, I guess, have a that sort of that relationship with their research office? Well, a lot less. Okay, you know, and you know, and sort of their links to sort of business development people and things like that. Okay, so if you, because these are all kind of little hooks. Is there anybody else that the marketing communications people? No. Any other things that we, the IT department? God, this is going to be a bit sad. Okay. Anybody else within the key sort of places within the organisation that you can kind of really pull on that actually are trying to kind of, you know, can actually be really helpful facilitators if you get them on the right day?
Innovation department. I mean, I don't know how the universities are running their innovation, because I know you have quite big innovation accelerators, but I do think they pull through a lot of information and could be quite valuable.
And the doctoral school as well. If there's support for PhD students centrally, you can loop into them.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. That was hopefully an interesting session.